Okay, welcome back, everybody. We were in, thanks for coming, I should say. We were in executive session. We were doing the second part of our board retreat for the year. We call it a little mini retreat. We were not getting mini facials. We were talking about the open meetings law and other board business. So it was really helpful. Actually, it's always great to revisit that material. And a thank you to Mike Lambert, our attorney, for walking us through some stuff. I'd like to remind everybody that we are looking for a new school board candidate. Peter Henderson will be leaving us shortly, unfortunately. His last meeting will be the following meeting. I think it's the 17th. And we have put out a call to the community. So anybody who is interested should submit a bio, a letter of interest to our district clerk by Friday the 13th. It's kind of a foreboding day to be submitting your letter of interest, but the letter of interest and the bio, and we are specifically asking for anybody who has financial expertise, experience with school or government funding. And we ask that because we know that there's a hole being created by losing Peter. He's so strong in that area, and we feel like the board really benefits from that strength. So that's why we're putting that out there as a preference. And this person would fill the role through May, and then when we have the budget vote and the trustee vote in May, that person would be up for election again. So it is, it's a short term, but hopefully that person is looking long term. So if anybody has any questions about what it means to serve on the board, I am happy to answer them. Anybody here on the board is happy to answer them. It is a valuable service and worth doing. So hopefully we'll get some good candidates in the mix.
Maybe just before you move on,
Please.
this would be a good time for me to say,
sure.
spend a minute or two. I've been asked by several people, why I'm leaving before the end of my elected term, and it's a fair question. So I'd like to explain a little bit, but without going into too much detail, because it really is a complicated mix of personal reasons. But basically, we all, I'm sure, struggle to some extent with that work-family balance. And when you throw in board service on top of that, it becomes very challenging. And I decided a long time ago, 18 years ago, to put my career aspirations aside, to work freelance so I would be able to work from home and have flexible hours, so I could share fully in my parenting responsibilities. And it's certainly been a trade-off that's been enormously rewarding. And I'm lucky that I've been able to do it. But now that my son's off to college, I really need to focus on getting my career back on track. And so that's a big part of it. And there's, as anybody here will attest to, there's so much more to being a board member than just showing up at these meetings twice a month. There's an enormous amount of work that goes on behind the scenes on different committees, just the offline discussions, all the reading. So it is quite time consuming, and that's really the struggle that I have. I've spent almost 4 years on the board, and before that I served on 2 district committees. So I hope that over that time I've made a positive contribution. So, and the other major factor, I think, is that I feel this is the right time for me to do this, because we spent the last year supporting our new superintendent and putting in place this high-level plan that's going to guide the district for the next 5 years. And the plan's goals are necessarily broad and somewhat vague. And now it's time to focus on the implementation details. How exactly we're going to engage students more deeply, how we'll know if we're successful, what learner profiles will look like and how they'll be used, and what role consultants will play in the implementation. So it's a lot of big questions that won't be answered immediately, and they're going to require ongoing dialogue and input from the community. So we do need somebody who's ready to make that sort of 3 to 4 year commitment to stay the course, and that's something that I can't do at that point. So that's pretty much it. That's where I'm coming from. If anybody has specific questions, I'd certainly be happy to answer them offline, but I think as far as reasons for the stating to the public, those are the major reasons, so I hope that's helpful.
It is. Thanks, Peter. Good. I think there's just one more thing I want to mention, and that is one of our goals, our board goals, has been to create more transparency with the public, and one of those ways is through board docs. Diana just informed me that now when you are on the website and you go to board docs, you're saying, hey, I want to go to this board docs and see what's going on at the meeting, and then you get there and you don't know how to use it. There's a board docs tutorial that is directly below the link to get to board docs. So that tutorial is there to assist the public in continuing to know what's on the agenda and to get the information out there. So that's good.
It's made by our wonderful district clerk.
Oh, thank you, Julia. Okay, so we're going to move into the superintendent's report.
Okay, so we have a lot of moving pieces right now, a lot of things going on, so I'll kind of give you an update of where we are with a number of things. For those community members, you probably, over the last couple of meetings, have heard me talk about the creation of the Community Leaders Group. And this is a new group of any interested community members that want to come together and want to have an open discussion about what's going on within the district. And it's, instead of it being in a situation like this where it's a board meeting and we're more presenting rather than having a conversation, this is an opportunity to sit around and have a conversation and ask questions. The first meeting will be the November the 17th, the next board meeting, which starts at 7. The Community Leaders Group will be from 6 to 7. So it'll give us an hour to sit down and have a conversation. We've sent a number of invitations out. We've had a number of other people that have signed up to be part of it. Linda, my secretary, within the next week or so, will be sending out requests for agenda items. So if there's anything specific that people would like to hear about, we can prepare for it, and we know what you're going to be asking. And if you have something that you want to ask there, certainly we'll answer it, but we may not be able to do the homework that we would do for things that are on the agenda before we go. So again, November 17th from 6 to 7 o'clock, we will have our first Community Leaders Group meeting. There are a number of other conversations, and some of these are related to the board goals and to my goals, and some of the things that we're looking at doing is providing services for the community and also communication to the community. Next meeting on November 17th, we're also going to be talking about the potential of creating before and after school care in the district. And we have looked at different options, and probably the most appropriate option for our community, we've already had a discussion with Amber Stickler from the Phillipstown Parks and Rec. They do run an after-school program, and they would be willing to run both a before and after school program here. We don't have a before school program. And so we talked about having this conversation on the 17th. We've had a preliminary conversation with the Phillipstown Park and Rec. And so they're going to be joining us, we hope, at the 17th. A good suggestion that Jen made is also to bring in maybe a member of the PTA so we can talk about how the enrichment, at the PTA enrichment program and the after-school care can kind of coexist. And so that will be our next discussion. One of the things we're talking about is what time the before school program would start, and it would probably be about an hour before the elementary school starts, so it would give parents a little more flexibility. And so we're talking about from 7:30 to 8:30, a potential morning program, and an afternoon program that also includes the ability to take the PTA enrichment till about 6 o'clock. So that's kind of where we left it, and there'll be others. Do you have a question?
I
Looks
do.
like- okay.
You tell by my face. Does the before school take, like, how is that in relation to the discussion we're having about changing the time?
Well, that would be part of it. I mean, if whether the time starts at, well, it would go a little later if we had a change in the
But we're
start time.
discussing them independently and in correlation.
Right. Yeah. I think that there's potential of a before-school program regardless of what time the elementary school
that's
starts. Yeah. So, and that's something else we'll have to decide. We have it we'll have it as a conversation again as we continue through the month of November. The tutorial for the Board of Education we just talked about. We have also a discussion that we need to have about financial reports. Do you want to have that now, or?
No, I think we were going to talk about that under new business, right?
Yep.
I think this is just talking about Anne's tutorial for the public about what is in the financial reports and how to read them, right?
Oh, that's our friend Ann Dinio. That's her show. Yes, I'm sorry. So on December 1st, Ann is going to be giving us a quick lesson on financials, state finances 101. So that should be very interesting. So yes. So,
And that's right before the December business
that's
meeting.
correct.
And that's open to the public. It is kind of geared, I mean, the board has asked for it, but it's geared to the public as well. So anybody who wants in on the information.
Maybe that's the board member person.
Get your tickets now, December 1st, 6 o'clock.
Yeah. So she's already preparing. The next group of questions or information come from our professional development that we're presently having. Today was a superintendent's conference day, and today and tomorrow we have our staff developers from the PEBC here to help talk about some of our practices in relationship to our strategic plan. And some of the things that we discussed today were how do you deepen kids' understanding or students' understanding? How do you create discourse and conversations that make them think deeply and bring information that they already have and understand and research information? How do you put that all into the project-based learning or the deeper learning discussions that we've been having? Tomorrow we will have some of our grade levels, second and third grade, will be working directly with the staff developers, as will math and science, and that will be kind of moving into a deep understanding based on those grade levels or those disciplines. Recently, we have also had visitations to Tech Valley High School, which is a wall-to-wall PBL school. Our staff developer comes from Tech Valley High, and instead of just having her come in and share her experiences with us, we actually are taking two groups, one that already went and one that will be going on the 9th to Tech Valley to see what deeper learning or authentic learning experiences look like in a school that's been doing it for a decade. And so we have two groups I would like to ask if you would like to say something. Ladies, any things that you would like to share about today's work?
Sure.
Sure.
Hello. The workshop today was it was very, very interesting. Last year PEBC came to present. The contrast between when they presented last year and when they presented this year is that this year I was happy to hear from them that what they were presenting to us and what they wanted us to work on today was something that we could just add to what we're already doing. And so they weren't asking us to do another new thing, like another thing to add to what we're already currently learning about. So I know that in my with my table, my group, and the different people that I worked with, there was a lot of really good discussion. Like everyone was very, very engaged, and the group as a whole felt very reassured that what they were presenting, which was one of the things they were talking about, was using a workshop model. And it was reassuring for me personally and professionally that what they were speaking about I felt like there were many elements that I'm already using in my classroom. And so I felt really reassured by that, feeling like that I, am going in the right direction. But on the other hand, there are also things that I know that I plan to focus on and add to based on what I learned today. So.
Thank you. And that there was a discussion, quite a bit of discussion about how all the things that we're working on are all kind of correlating and coming together, and the understanding of how they can, one can help foster the other, and they're all part of the same whole, I think was a big part of our discussion today. We also had one of our board members go to Tech Valley High, which is on the University of Albany College of Nanoscience and Engineering. It's a high school that exists through their BOCES. And Evan, would you mind saying a few
Sure.
words about that?
Sure. So I went with the school on the 21st, and it was great. Want to thank thank you for the invitation. It was very nice to see. First of all, I was very surprised about the number of people that we sent that day, the teachers that were there, and I thought that was a great school for us to visit because I saw a lot of similarities in that school and Haldane as far as just the culture, that in the sense that it seemed like it was very disciplined, but yet a lot of freedom. So, and which is kind of a good way, I think, to describe here. And I think that PBL is a great way. I don't see that we're going towards that type of, that school is wall-to-wall PBL. I don't see, we're not heading in that direction, but to have that as part of a course or have it as a course, I think that the skills that those kids are learning are the skills that is the workforce today. The way those students were communicating with each other, the way they work together online. It was very interesting the way the school was designed. Everything was designed to write on. The windows, the cabinets, you walk around and, they're like, you go into the science lab and there's formulas on the cabinets, okay, but they're made, to, that you can erase it. So it just breeds collaboration. And, they have a one-on-one program as well. Theirs are with laptops, so every kid has a laptop, and there's outlets everywhere. And I thought it was great. And I think that it's a great place for us to use as a resource because it's so close. We can go up there anytime, and we can outreach. So I encourage it. I was very, very excited about it. Now, the one thing that I found with the teachers are that from what I spoke with the teachers is that some of them are still a little, okay, not, where are we going with this? And definitely in the training phase. But the Haldane teachers. But they are definitely gung-ho, about it. And I definitely see a lot of great things for it. I know it's hard to give up a whole day, but if somebody could go up there, if you wanted to go up there, I would encourage if you can piggyback on one of those days one day to go see it. It's a very good learning experience. So
We still have the group that's going on the 9th, if anybody has an interest in going. This also, between the visitation and the conference day and the discussions that we've had within the last couple of weeks, we also had an interesting conversation. I think this may interest you, Peter. We had a student that made a comment at the last meeting talking about one type of experience that she enjoyed and one type she didn't under the auspices of project-based learning. And one of the things that we talked about, and I think you posed this question, is did we think about what she said, and was there any thinking beyond that? And of course there was. But today we talked with the administrative group, and one of the things that we realized is that we haven't talked to the students about the strategic plan, or we haven't really told them why we're looking to move in this direction. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing is talking about, what does the conversation look like for the middle school and the high school students, and explain why this type of instructional practice, why it's so germane right now. And it is all within the strategic plan. If you read the strategic plan, all the components move us in this direction for the reasons that we understand, because we want to create graduates that have the skill set and the ability to collaborate and do the things that you were saying about in the workforce. And so this is something, not only are we going to be explicit in our conversation with the faculty, but we also have to be explicit with the kids. So that's something that we're going to be working on within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's a lot of communication that needs to happen. Because when the kids know about it, they can go and explain it to their families. Because there are a lot of families that are very confused about this too. And they don't understand the context. And they've told me that they've gone and looked at the strategic plan to find out about project-based learning, and there's nothing there. Because it doesn't, there's one sort of, one mention of something that suggests project-based learning, but it's not really spelled out in much detail in the plan. And so people are looking for information and they're not able to find it, and that's been a source of frustration. So yeah, these conversations are definitely happening among family members, and so getting the kids to tell the parents is probably the ideal way for it to happen.
Right. And I do think, and and when you're saying that, what I think about the strategic plan, really I think the strategic plan, the whole thing describes project-based learning. But if you don't know where, and if you don't understand the correlation, you may not understand how that all works or comes together. So it's a good conversation that we're going to have.
Yeah, and I think that, Peggy, we were talking, you mentioned a bit as well online, but this idea that, change is hard for everybody, including the students, right? So, kids come in expecting their worksheets and their tests and their grades, and if they don't have that, they're like, wait, what is this? So it's also about getting the students to understand, hey, we're going to do this project a little differently, and this is why. And the outcomes are going to be different. You're not going to get a test on this one. It's going to be more about your project, or it's going to be more about the process, or whatever. But that conversation needs to happen with the students as much as it needs to happen with the parents.
And one of the questions that I asked specifically was about that. What about that one student, like a group gets a grade and one student is not happy with that grade? What happens there? And there is room for individuality even in this group setting. So, so you can break free of the group if you feel as though you want to continue to move to improve when the group kind of stops. So it doesn't kind of, because I think some people might argue that, then how does one student shine and one student doing the work for the whole group? There's ways around it, and I think that's an element of the PBL process that has to be, they have to learn how that goes.
Sure.
And
We've
students
all
as
had
well.
those experiences as students, right? Like really bad group learning where one person's doing all the work
Right.
and getting,
Right.
we've all had that experience, right? So how do you not make that happen? How do you make it about collaboration? How do you identify along the way how it's going?
Well, one thing that they talk about quite a bit in that situation is if you have a group that's working together and one person that's just not doing their work, the group can actually fire them.
Yes.
And if in that situation, if you have 4 people that are part of the group, they each have they have individual components, and then if you're released from a group, then you have to do all of them yourself. So it's advantageous to make sure that you're working very collaboratively, so you don't end up with, much more work. So that's, and it's something that they understand. Sure.
I'm not going to mention any names, but it's my perception that there are certain teachers that many people in the community have had for their teachers that are admired and respected and loved, and while we haven't called it that, it's interesting you use this new kind of term. It's something that we're really trying to emphasize, but I think families have experienced that kind of really good teaching. Yes. It's been here, it's been here, and I think it's actually something that probably a lot of people have aspired to, but it's very ambitious. It's challenging. And it's true. I think it is more challenging to kids. Kids may complain about not wanting to have another, just lecture or presentation, but to put them in a situation where they're being asked to really like go outside the box and challenge themselves intellectually. I think that can be hard, but it's something we would much rather them become familiar with when they're at home with us than when they go off. So yeah, I actually really appreciated Andrea's. I didn't know if it was Andrea or Andrea. It was Andrea. I'm sorry. I'll had this pause. Like your perception of what today brought. Like last year, it felt like a lot, but this year it's like, okay, let's add this thing on, and that you all were excited about it, I remember you talking about. Anyway, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Just before we move on, you mentioned worksheets, and worksheets have come up in conversations that I've had as well. And is there any legitimate educational reason for teachers to be using worksheets in this environment of engaging students and collaborative deep learning? Is there any legitimacy there?
Well, I can tell you it's probably not the most engaging practice, and so it's something that there are times that you can give student information, and it's far deeper than on a piece of paper. That's far deeper than a worksheet. But there's also times that it's rote understanding, and they just put something down, and it's very basic, and that's not what we're looking for.
So I think judging from the reaction here, it seems that it might be the time for us to make some kind of a statement that says Haldane is not about worksheets, and worksheets really are a thing of the past.
It starts early. I've got a refrigerator door full of Everett's worksheets for the year from every week. So it's like in kindergarten, it starts early. There's a multitude of worksheets that happen.
Well, that's something that will be part of our discussion as we phase this process in. So the next couple of things I'd like to correlate or talk about in relationship to this too is just the concept of PBL or the terminology of PBL. The acronym itself is one that I think causes some confusion because not all project-based learning ends with a project. Or it could be a process, or it could be something that students are learning and they're coming together, putting information and research together to come up with an understanding. So probably what you'll be hearing us speak about more is deeper learning and authentic learning experiences as opposed to project-based learning, because that defines what they are better. Things that students want to get involved in, they have an interest in. They're going to do research and create an understanding with the support of the teacher, and then ultimately it'll be the deeper understanding that comes out of it. So we have, the next is the Smart Schools Grant and the Super Schools Grant, and we talked about both of those last week. We continue to look at, with the Smart Schools Grant, again, it's about $250,000 that is going to come from the state that will come to our school, and we're actively pursuing that. The application for the process has gone in. We had to do a survey, which is basically the application, so now we have to make a decision once we know more about it as to how we're going to spend the $250,000 that we're going to get. Right now, not all the information has been given to us. And so that's something we're looking at. We're continuing to look at the potential of submitting a Super Schools grant application and see if anything comes of that. And that we have to have that ready by the 15th of November. So we're moving in that direction.
Oh, the Smart Schools is, I know this, I'm just catching on. The Smart Schools is the technology coming from the New York State Department of Education. Right, from the governor's office, and that is, that's the application, or not application, but I should actually, survey, right, of what you needed.
Right.
I was conflating the two a little bit, I apologize.
But it's basically, it's called a survey, but it's really more like an application, and Ann spent hours putting that together and submitting to the state. And what we're looking at is really looking at the structure, the bandwidth, whatever the needs are for the district, because we know we're going to continue to go further down the road with technology. We just want to make sure that we're ready for it when it comes. So that's where our focus has been.
And Diana, I'm sorry to.
Sure.
I'm actually, so because of my work schedule, I'm the board liaison to the tech committee, and I haven't been able to, I'll be able to attend in another month, those meetings. The information about what's in that survey, I could probably be in touch with you to get that. Because I remember us talking about it at one point and being really clear that we wanted to make sure, and I'm assuming this is what you all did, we wanted to make sure that what we invested in with that money, especially given that technology is changing so quickly, we wanted to think really strategically and make sure that what we invested in had some potential for real long-term payoff. And I'm assuming that's what y'all set out to do.
Right, and could we use individual devices? Yes, but in a few years, then the funding's gone and we don't have anything that's enhancing the district. And so we're kind of moving our thinking into that direction.
Like infrastructure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is money that the taxpayers of New York will be paying off over the next 20 years. So we want to make sure that this is not just flash in the pan spending.
Okay, the next is where are we in the strategic plan? And as you've been hearing month to month, you will hear more about us really going out and beginning to take and creating a vision of where we're going. Our staff development continues, our training continues, our look at what we can potentially become as we go through visitations continue, and our relationship with the New Tech Network is also solidifying. I'm keeping a blog, so to speak, or kind of a running rendition of what we're doing as we implement the strategic plan, and we're going to make sure that we keep that up to date, so we always have an understanding of what we've done so far. And we realize that if we were to look at the end of the year and say, okay, now what did we do now? We're going to have a much better idea of the different components by keeping it up to date. So that's also in the process.
And Diana, regarding the relationship with the New Tech Network, you provided us with the 5-year proposal of how they would be engaged with us over the next 5 years. And it was pretty high level. There wasn't really a whole lot of meeting out. We're also missing the cost element. I think it's important for us to know, what's this engagement costing us?
Right.
So you don't need to tell us right now, but I think that's something that we want to know.
Well, I can tell you now if you'd like to know. So if in the budgeting process we put about somewhere between $70,000 and $75,000 in for the staff development. The two areas that we're focusing on, the New Tech Network, there's kind of an umbrella, which is our relationship with them, the training that comes with it. We sent teachers to Chicago over the summer. We're paying for the cost of these visitations, and there'll be additional visitations and additional work in the spring. We'll be sending the teachers that are in the planning process right now and learning about and getting the staff development together. They will be going to an institute next summer. And for the first phase, including the summertime visitations, it'll be about $50,000. And that's including travel expenses, costs with the New Tech Network. And so that will continue for 3 years, and then it will be going down as we train everybody. The other $20,000 has been with our work with the Public Education and Business Coalition, and probably that will start phasing out because we will finish with our second year with them. If we have them back, it would probably only be one time. And so that's at $20,000. Last year it was $30,000. Now it'll probably go down to either 0 or 10. And so that's kind of where we are with that.
Okay.
And then the last component on my superintendent's report, we are looking again for a school board candidate. Unfortunately, as we have a board member leaving, we are looking for people who are willing to step in or a person who is willing to step in. At this point, no one has submitted an application, but we'd just like to remind you that we're looking for one. So any questions I can answer, if you want to give me a call, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the board and what the board, the timing and the amount of energy and all the other things that go along with it. So that's it for me.
Okay, do we have any questions or communication from the public at this time? Yes.
Hi. So I just, I'd like to just start by saying that I'm very glad to hear. So a lot of the things I was planning on speaking about tonight are, questions that my members, the HFA members, have come to me about. They've been speaking with me. And the questions that they have are questions that it sounds like the board shares. So, so that's, again, reassuring for me to hear that we're all sharing some of the same questions. One of the questions that that my members have come to me about is the question about being explicit, about giving families information. Many teachers have been asked by parents, by community members, if they happen to live in the community or in Food Town or whatever, they're asked by the community about money, about because it seems that a lot of money is being spent, that the professional development, while very worthwhile, and and I know that that's something that's very important to you as superintendent to give to us, and we all relish the opportunity to grow. Parents are asking the question, how much money is being spent? Where is this money coming from? And my teachers just want to know, how do they answer that question? What is the best way for them to answer that question to parents who ask them that? So that's something that, obviously I'm not saying tell me now, but that's something that is happening. It's happening regularly enough that teachers are coming
Just
to
interrupt
me.
you're saying that people are asking about how much is the school spending on professional development for teachers? That's
Yeah,
what their
professional
question is,
development,
where's
and
that money coming
yes,
from?
yes, thank you, Jen.
Okay.
On professional development, and and all of the other things that are included in that. Meaning time away from the classroom for teachers, and who is teaching the kids when the teachers are out at these visits, or doing these workshops and things like that.
Okay.
So that's a question that parents have been asking the teachers, and the teachers want to be able to answer those questions, and they don't know how. So they've asked me to ask you. Another question that that the teachers have, again, has to do with being explicit. The teachers on a whole, I spoke about today's workshop and how it was reassuring to me to know that I wasn't having to learn something else, something new. We've had a lot of new things that we've been given with the PBL, and with Google Classroom, and project-based learning, and so many of the teachers are starting to feel sort of overwhelmed and frankly confused as to where we are going with all of this training. I mean, there have been several members, as you know, who have visited Tech Valley High, who are going to go visit a PBL elementary school, I believe, in California later on in the year. And we kind of feel like I don't want to say being given a mixed message, or maybe part of a message, but we just don't know where we're going. Like Evan, you had said, that the going full PBL is not where we're going, but that's not what all of our members are hearing. I feel like there's more than one message that's being presented to us, and we want to know. We just want to know what the expectations are. The people who went to Tech Valley High, the teachers who went to Tech Valley High, the teachers who went to the PBL workshop over the summer, they were not sure. They were asked to go, and of course, when a teacher is asked to do something, to go to a workshop or to do something to improve their practice, they're going to say yes. No one's going to say no. But they weren't really given much information, like, what is the purpose of this visit? What am I looking for? Why am I going? And what's expected of me once I return from that visit? No one's been asked to turn key. No one is really sure what the expectation is of them, and what the expectation is for going forward in the future. And so I think that that's just something that really, I want for you to know that no one is against, problem-based learning, project-based learning, thinking deeper. Obviously, no one is against that. We all want that for our kids because that's where the future of education is. But we just want to know explicitly, where are we headed? Some of us are hearing, yes, the plan is we're joining the New Tech Network, and that means that we are going to implement full problem-based learning, project-based learning. And then on the other hand, where others of us are hearing, no, this is just an additional tool that you can use in addition to what you're already doing. So that's just something that I think I would personally like to know, and I know that my members, all of them, would also like to know.
Well, I can tell you in the beginning of the year, if you remember at our opening superintendent's conference day, the 5-year plan that Peter was referring to, we shared with the entire faculty. And it was kind of the movement and the 5-year sequence of as we begin to work with the New Tech Network. There's never been an expectation that we were going to go wall to wall. And if you looked at the plan, there are components, especially in the early years, the primary years, and in the high school when they start really getting refining their interests and taking some of the higher level courses, that there will be deeper learning experiences, authentic learning experiences, but it's certainly not going to be wall to wall. And as it was the case last year and this year, we're asking people to try a unit of study, or if they have some more interest, they're looking at a couple units of study. But that's what we've said in the past, and what we've said today, and what we've said in the beginning of the year is still true. It hasn't changed. And at your next faculty meetings, the people that have gone to Tech Valley will share out, and they'll talk about what they experienced, and that's going to be about the extent of it. It's just letting people see the future, what's possible, see what it looks like after 10 years of an experience. And I don't think that's any different than you've heard us say before. So what we've said in the past and what I'm saying now is still the same. It hasn't changed.
Okay, so we're not looking to model what I saw. I looked at the New Tech Network website and and the Tech Valley High website as well. Those are the only two that I truly looked at. From what I saw, the schools that are on the New Tech Network are PBL schools, and so. I mean, I'm hearing you, and I don't want to sound like I don't believe you, because I do. That's not that. You're lying to me. But I'm hearing you, and I'm looking at all of the other the information from all of the other sources, and also I do know that some teachers, they've told me that they have been told that yes, that at the elementary school they are that is what the plan is. Or at least they've been given that impression, I should say. Okay, I wasn't present for any of those conversations, so I only know what they've said to me, and they've told me that this is the impression that that they have been given.
Well, I would suggest telling anybody who has an interest that probably the right forum for this discussion would be the faculty meetings, where
Sure.
they can have open dialogue.
Sure.
And if there's
Yeah,
questions.
I mean, we had a faculty meeting with Brian the other day, and it was really, and it was very, like, he was saying exactly what you were saying, and really, I keep saying reassured, but reassured the the high school faculty members that this was, that as you're saying, it's a tool, an additional tool to our already rich arsenal of.
Yeah, and I don't think I know that the 4th and the 5th grade are in the planning year this year, so we're not even in the implementation process yet. But that would be the right venue. Ask Brent, he can clarify it for the 4th and 5th grade that's going in. And again, the primary, we're not even going that direction.
Okay.
Because that's going to be mainly the reading and writing foundations that they need to get in their mathematical understanding. We want to get that intact before we start moving into the next phase of their learning.
Okay. And so you say that they're in the planning what does
That
that
5-year
mean?
sequence that we shared at the opening day.
Okay.
There's 3 stages, and kind of a repeat of what we talked about then is that there are some grades that are in the planning cycle now, so they're learning.
They're learning
what it
how
is.
to create
Right.
a.
And there are no expectations in the planning cycle for anything other than what the teacher wants to include and how far they'd like to take it.
Gotcha.
And so the ones that have gone through the institutes with Stacia, and the ones that have gone through some of the other training, like PBL New York,
Okay.
it's all the planning. Next year, they start phase 1 of implementation, and they will roll out some deeper learning institutes and
Okay.
or PBL units of study, however you
Okay.
want to call them. And so it's basically it's the same thing.
Okay.
And then another group will go into the planning year next year. And so by the end of 3 years, most of the teachers that are going to be going in will either be in the planning year, the implementation year, and the refinement year. And then we're going to have people getting trained to keep the implementation process going on and the coaching process going on until the new tech network phases out, and then we're on our own, and we've built capacity. So that's the process.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I mean, the great thing about going to Tech Valley also was not just seeing the teachers and the programs, but it was also seeing the kids and the excitement level on the kids that loved doing that, loved learning that. They talked about the way they learned, and they talked about how they learn different than their other friends that go to their district high schools. And that was really exciting. We walked into a classroom and we saw there was a kid, the teacher was teaching. It was more of a lecture, actually, and a kid was sleeping. Okay, and so I forgot who said it. I don't even know who said it. Said a lot. Well, but it's interesting because someone made an interesting comment. They said, you know, a lot of people look at that kid and go, "Oh, that's a lazy kid. That's a disrespectful kid." It's like, but I see a kid who's bored out of his mind because he probably knows exactly what the teacher's already talking about. So it's a different way of looking at it, and you know, but the kids were just so excited about that way of learning, and I think that will translate here. There's a great video. We actually, one of my teachers who ran a PD today in my school, he showed it, and I'm actually I wanted to email it to you to maybe show it at the 17th meeting. It's called, if you Google it on YouTube, Technology and Education, it talks about technology, how it's one thing to have technology, but if you're not using it in the right way, it's pointless.
Sure.
And now we have this great technology, and now we have to move to the next generation. I think about, you know, where we've come. You know, 5 years ago, it would just be, you walked into a classroom, you saw kids on iPads or laptops. You're like, wow, these kids are using iPads and laptops. Now it's like everyone's using iPads and laptops. It's like now it's about how are you using it, and I think that's the key. It's not, now we have the technology. It's like, how are we using it? Collaborate and communicate. That's in the video. And I'm going to email you the link tomorrow.
That sounds good.
So I'll email it to you too.
Please do.
Yes.
I just have one teeny tiny follow-up question. Okay, and it reminded me of it. The school that the fourth grade teachers are going to be visiting in California, is it a public school? Is it a public PBL school? Because I think that's something that is interesting to me, because I know that although Tech Valley High is public, right? They are accepted through an application process, and so I'd be interested. Pardon me?
Well, I think they
Yeah.
have more applications than they do spots.
Oh, I see. That's
So-
a lot of.
Yeah. So I mean, they do have to apply for it. So so I would just be interested, in hearing, like, how that applies to just your, my everyday public school. That's not that it takes all comers. So that's something that I just curious about.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because we don't know the relationship between like a Tech Valley and a public school, but we also will be looking at districts that have gone into this kind of learning that are similar to what we are. And, so that's a special school that focuses on that.
Okay.
But it's not, but there are districts that also are moving in that direction.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Can we address Andrea's financial question
Sure.
for just a moment? And
Sure.
I don't know if this is putting either Ann or Diana on the spot, so if we can't address it right now. I'm sure they'll get the information to you. But I believe, Diana, you just said that we were spending about $75,000 this year
Right.
on professional development. Some of that's for the New Tech Network, some of that's for the
PEBC.
PEBC. So if we have $75,000 kind of earmarked for professional development this year, and our overall budget is what, 22 million?
Yep.
So, if we do quick math, we would say that the professional development is approximately what percentage of our overall budget?
I'll let Ann do that calculation.
Very small. 3%?
Oh, not even.
2%?
3%. It's way less than 3%.
What's the calculation? Somebody do it. Who's got their calculator?
It's a third of a percent.
I think the key point also is this is not just coming. This was in presentations when we talk about
Right, the budget.
the budget.
Yeah.
Like this was we talked about this in February of last year.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying, in terms of giving like a talking
Yeah.
point for a teacher to be able to say, the school spends less than 1%, of its annual budget on professional development. That's actually like nothing, in my mind. It's very minimal.
The other part that is probably worthwhile mentioning is that we actually run it through BOCES. And as we invite teachers to be part of the process from other districts, and we actually have our teachers going out and learning in other districts, like we did for Yorktown with the co-teaching this year, we're bartering some of that. And because we do that, we can run it through BOCES. And so we get about a third of that back in BOCES aid. BOCES is, 34%.
So are you talking about like the consultants, like the Goldman Sachs and Rothschild, that's stuff
And the
through?
PEBC and the work that we're doing with the New Tech Network.
Okay.
So, and that's something that we did last year and we're continuing to do. So we're looking at whatever way we can offset some of the cost. And so it's not just that we're just paying people. It's that we're running it through BOCES, we're inviting people in, our teachers have been invited in other places, so that can be considered a shared service. It also helped when we talked about, we had to calculate our shared services in order to get the funding back from the governor's office for our taxpayers. That was also part of that. So there's a lot of moving pieces that are all interrelated. And so even though we're looking at $75,000 this year, we have money that is coming back from last year, and then this money will come back next year. And
see.
so that's all part of the process.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I said thank you like 5 times. Thank you.
Sure.
So I don't want to speak on the part of the teachers because I don't know what their experience is, but I would anticipate that it's there are a lot of moving pieces. I mean, one of the things that I found so interesting in being part of the strategic planning process was the incredible enthusiasm that was brought from a lot of different teachers. But there is no doubt about it that what was set out in the strategic plan and what was, I think, being asked for was really very ambitious in terms of really wanting to provide like really deep learning experiences that really address kids were different kind of learners and came with different strengths and weaknesses. I mean, and I think my perception of the strategic planning process was that and there's a lot of different people, but that group was really setting the bar like really very high. I mean, the bar's already pretty high, right? I mean, I think, we as a community expect an enormous amount from our children, and they do pretty well, but what really came through was that people were really wanting to say like, oh, let's go even higher. And I think that creates a tension. I think that creates a tension, I would guess, for teachers in particular, because like so much is being asked of teachers, and there's so much, criticism, I think, thrown, and so I think that makes a lot of sense. And then I think the community is, because there's this excitement and it is this thing that a lot of people wanted. We've been talking about it a lot, and so it gives this impression like everything's changing and it's changing right now, and it's important to keep having these conversations so that we can really take the pulse on what the feelings are, but then also to really listen to what I hear Diana saying, and what I hear in terms of the planning is that there is a strategy in place, and not everything's changing at once, and but that it's still like, it is still really, I think it's this interesting tension, because it's exciting, but then it's also kind of scary. And I think one of the things I was so struck by in hearing the student speak last time was her frustration with this change in learning, and I've talked to some of you all about it, but in my research, where we're actually doing these things, where we're actually asking kids to engage and really these really complex projects, with kids, it's hard for them, and also, like, I think your point, Andrea, is that there's so many different kinds of learners, right? Haldane has so many. We're not just, we're a community with lots of different kinds of kids, with lots of different levels of motivation, and so, yeah, I mean, I guess it's not that this is necessarily very helpful, but, I think it does. I think change is hard. I think change is really stressful. I think that what the community laid forth for the district was ambitious and asked a lot, and it makes sense to me that there are concerns, and I just. I think it's really important that we all make a conscious effort to really kind of separate out, like, what is the talk and what's maybe some of the anxiety, and really paying attention to what's happening on the ground, and I think that's what we've asked of you, Diana, and I think that's one of the things you're setting forth, like laying out right now, is making clear that there is a step. There are steps in place. I know I'm going on. I'm going to say one more thing, though. I'm sorry,
And
but
now I have some things I have to say.
okay, I'll just
got
stop.
2 minutes
Okay,
before Chief has to
all right,
say.
I'll stop. I mean, anyway, one of the things that really impressed me about what Leah and Simon said when they spoke about it was the recognition that change takes time. So anyway, yes, I'll stop.
Okay, so I'm gonna say just one thing, and then we'll take the break, and then I'll say a couple more. But one of the things that I think that we all have to be aware of is any of the work that we're doing now, it's hard work. It's something that it's meaningful, and it's something that will help to create the skill set that's needed for the graduate of tomorrow. And whether that's the graduate in 2018 or 2025, we're educating all of them. And we have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in preparing them for whatever it is beyond. But it's a lot of hard work. And I think that we're all feeling that there is a lot to learn. We are being very purposeful for creating a 5-year plan along with the strategic plan. So it's not overwhelming, and people know when things are coming, and it's something that they can plan for and understand that what's the next step. And we are looking at a 5-year plan with the strategic plan, and we're looking at a 5-year plan with the implementation of this deeper learning. So we are in the infancy, we're in the beginning, we're just learning about it. It looks a little bit amorphous right now, and we will solidify it as we go forward, but it's all in the process. But it is a lot of hard work. And then, do you want to change, and then I'll talk about the next thing. Okay, so one of the things I'd also like to share, and the way I introduced the day today was to use a terminology, and you'll probably hear me say this over and over again, that as we started last year and as we started this year, we're talking about going an inch wide and a mile deep. And what we're doing is we're introducing concepts that our teachers are using in the classrooms, that our students are learning in the classroom. And the things that we're presenting and the topics that we're working on are all interrelated. So last year we had specific conversations around the same instructional practices that we're going to have this year, that we're going to have next year, and beyond. And instead of it being a popcorning of many things that come together, we're choosing the things that will help deepen our understanding of all of the process. And so instead of looking at something new, we're saying, okay, what we worked with last year and the information that we talked about, metacognition and deeper thinking and the learning strategies, these fit in, these are the practices that fit into the project-based learning type of instruction. And so the work that from the New Tech Network gives us more of the structure in which these types of opportunities come from or are taught, and the work with the PEBC is how do you teach within the structure. So it's all interrelated and it's all connected. And so as next year you will hear me talk about the continuation of going an inch wide and a mile deep. And what we're creating now is expertise in a new type of instructional practice. And it's going to take multiple years, and we're saying that we have a 5-year sequence. And so that's what we're looking at doing. So we are in, if you look at the 5 years, we're a year and 3 months or 2 months into it. And then we'll keep going. And the next year we'll be a little bit further along, and we'll be refining. We're not going to keep adding. We're going to be refining our understanding of practices, and we're going to try to use them more and to model them and do what we need to do in order to get us all comfortable. So I think that's what I can share.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions to derail us for a half hour? No. That was very helpful. Okay. Going into correspondence, we received a letter from Mr. Steve Petkus regarding the later start time, and Mr. Stephen Lafer regarding our SRO. So they are both there for anybody's perusal. Going into consent agenda minutes, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? These are the minutes for the Board of Education meeting, our last one, October 20th, 2015. All those in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda financial, may I have a motion, please?
Motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I asked Diana, could you just give a little chat about the approval of the garden educator contract, because that was a change.
Sure.
We approved the garden educators as substitute teachers, and this is now a shift into something else.
So we put aside some funding to pay some of the educators who are coming in and doing chef in the classroom and the garden education in the classroom. And originally we were going to consider when they came in, we were going to pay them as substitute teachers. And for a number of reasons, we opted to shift it. And we are now, we asked them to give us a contract so we could pay them as people coming into enrichment opportunities or consultants. So the funding is still the same amount of money. It's just being done in a different way. So it's just a modification of how we're going to pay them and the way in which we're going to do it.
So this is then coming out of the per diem substitute teachers line?
Well, actually, it's coming out of Brent's lines. It's coming within his budget.
Discretionary, his discretionary funding. Okay, any further discussion or questions about the financials? All those in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda personnel, may I have a motion, please?
Motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're moving into some unfinished business. Last meeting, we started talking about the later start time. Well, actually, we started talking about it a year ago. So this was a follow-up conversation. The administrators and Diana provided a really helpful PowerPoint, I felt like, a really robust conversation about 3 options available to us. And we kind of need to decide as a board if we want them to keep going with that investigation and take it further into deciding, how much all of it would really cost, polling the community, the teachers. Like, do we want them to keep going with it, or do we feel like it's not something we want to dive into right now, and we want to put it on hold? And we don't have to make that decision, right here tonight either. But we need to kind of start having that conversation as a group to just get out some where we are right now, like a little bit of a litmus test for the board, so that the administration can have a sense of where we want to go. So maybe I'll start the ball rolling by saying that my feeling currently is that I really find the research really compelling. I feel like it is so the right thing probably for us to be doing for our kids. And when Brian was talking about it as a health crisis, I don't even feel like that's dramatic. Like, I really buy into that. I really feel like it probably is a health crisis. But that all being said, and it kind of is heartbreaking to say this, but I just don't feel like now is the right time for the school to be going forward with this endeavor. I feel like we don't have the resources in place. I feel like what I heard a lot about was space. We need more space so that everything doesn't have to get compromised, specifically music and sports and arts. And I feel like the time shift would be a real stress on the community in terms of, after school care, before school care. And I know we're talking about getting that in place, but it's not in place yet. I think financially it would be really stressful for the community and for the district. And I think that culturally it would be kind of a stress. I feel like right now, Andrea just spoke about how she feels like everything's changing, and whether that's true or not, that's the perception, right? And so the teachers are being asked to teach a little bit differently. We have new faces, new administrators, a new SRO. Our superintendent is still relatively new. It feels like there's a lot of new stuff happening. So my feeling is that now's not really the right time. That the community isn't ready for it. It's not. We're not ready for it right now. So that's where I'm at. Evan, do you want to share some?
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll just go around. We'll go
It's. I don't think anyone could deny that a later start time would be beneficial, but I definitely got the sense from the administrators that that it would be very stressful on the school, and I think what would the cost, both the financial costs and the sacrifices that certain students would have to make as far as decisions between athletics and art and music and extra tutoring. It's just not there, and I think it's not as simple as just moving the times. So and for me personally, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about the research and the kids need to get sleep. So from a personal perspective, a high school student, my kids are in 10th grade. They're 15 years old, so they're very much still under the authority of their parents. Okay? And if I felt it was important that they get 8 hours of sleep, okay, I mean, they wake up between 6 and 6:30. That means if they're in bed by 10, they'll get their 8 hours. And so the early start time is not preventing any of these students from getting 8 hours sleep. We're just assuming that they're going to go to sleep at 11, 12 o'clock, and there's nothing we could do about it as parents. And I'm not telling any parent how to do it, but if it's important to you and you feel as though it has to be done, then there are structures in place that can be done in the houses. And it's the argument also is if we push the time, and which is a valid point, is by pushing up the times later, so if games go later and days go later, so that means kids start doing work later. And so inevitably, that was a very good point that students who typically go to sleep between 9 and 10 now might not be able to go to sleep between 10 and 11. So, so for the students that do go to sleep between 9:30 and 10, if they don't get home now from a game till 8 o'clock at night, they may not be able to go to sleep till 10, 11 o'clock. So the point is, so what I'm getting at is, if the sleep thing, I don't feel as though the early time stops a student who wants to get 8 hours of sleep, his 8 hours of sleep. And so with that being said, I mean, and I definitely got the sense from, with all due respect to our administrators, okay, if they really want something, they're going to let us know. And I think they feel as though this is a tough one to crack, okay, with our facilities. At some point, if the community really feels that this is a big piece of the puzzle that needs to be solved, then I think we need to expand the conversation to another cafeteria, another gym. You know what I mean? And then at some point, then the conversation can get real. But for now, I think the constraints are just too much.
Peggy?
So I think I might have said this a couple of weeks ago, but as I became aware of the research, I remember thinking, well, let's just switch the start times for the kids. Well, that can't be too hard. Let's just have the little kids come in at 8 and the high school kids come in at 9. I was like, I had it all solved, And what was really so astounding to me to hear Brian really lay it out was how that was not feasible. Given space and costs, it was really truly prohibitive. That to see that we'd have to break the tax cap was that was pretty convincing argument. And so then as a researcher, I was I just wasn't really sure if going the 30 minutes was going to make enough of a difference. That's not what the research says. The research is really pushing later and later. And, not to disagree with Evan, I mean, I do think there is some evidence about their kids' circadian rhythms, and they're a little bit different, and that's probably, that may well be true, But I don't think the 30 minutes, which is the affordable option, is going to buy us anything that we want, right? We're talking about a change, and I'm not convinced that it's going to have the payoff. If it was something that we thought, well, we're really going to move toward this, and this is going to be the initial step, then maybe I was going to be 30 minutes, all right, that's something. But given that the next step is really truly prohibitive, I don't think it's going to buy us anything. And I was convinced by, Carolyn talking about, it breaks. Then school time starts to break into family time, and that's really important. And, the research is really strong, but with something like this, it's not, you can't be 100% sure that it's going to result in the things that you want. They're not experimental studies. They can't be experimental studies. And so it seemed like it would just, it's not possible. And so anyway, that was, I meant to go 1 minute, but I went 2.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. When Peggy said when she first heard the research that we should just flip it, easy enough, I completely agree. That was exactly my thought. And then when Brian laid it all out and we saw the domino effects, I don't know how we could possibly do it and do it effectively. So I don't even know if it becomes tabled or it just, I think the whole school system is going to have to buy into it. Every other school that we play sports against is going to have to buy into it. Every other event is going to have to buy into it. Every after-school program, every other school district that we play sports against, every other music, event that we have, everybody has to buy in or it's not going to work for anyone. And I don't know how that can possibly work. But I initially thought, yes, there's the research, let's fix this. But I have to commend Brian for those slides because it was very clear cut that these are the only options and none of them looked good.
Well, I don't really have anything to add to what my fellow board members have already said. The only reason we wanted to keep this on the table, I think, was to give the community a chance to weigh in. And Well, there's not too many people here tonight, and my phone's not been ringing off the hook. Well, it has been, but it was not about this. So, I think you guys did a great job of just summing up where we're at.
So it sounds like to me that the Board of Education is really appreciative of the administration's proposal or information. That it wasn't really a proposal, the information that they shared. But at this time, we don't feel like we need to go farther with it. We feel like it isn't the right time. There's just not enough resources in place.
And we understand because it would be too difficult to do this in isolation. So as I mentioned last week, it would have to be a huge leap, and there would be a lot of ripple effects and it would be problematic to do it right now.
But if something came up that changed something,
Well, that
I'd
would be
certainly
different.
be willing to listen to it again.
But in isolation, there are just too many things that we'd have to do.
So it seems like, because with good reason, there's not going to be not everybody's going to be aware of this decision that's being made tonight. New people will come into the community, the issue will be raised again. But I think for myself, I just want to sort of put a bookend on it to the extent that my understanding at this point is that a decision that we're making by not moving forward to it is acknowledging that there would need to be more of a systematic change, like across the BOCES or whatever in terms of the extracurriculars, but that's the space limitations. That the space limitations.
space
that
than,
to me, that to me is the
other
biggest.
people.
To me, it was more the space. It just brought home to me the extent to which the cafeteria situation and the gym
gyms.
situation have such profound effects on what we can and cannot do. I mean, I remember the years when Pete was eating lunch at 9:30. I mean, it's just like,
And I do believe that part of our strategic plan is also talking about the facilities and what our facilities need. And that certainly has come up before, irregardless of a later start time, that people want another cafeteria, people want another auditorium. So it's been part of a conversation that we've been having ongoing. So I think that that's right. I think that unless those other things are put in place, those supports, I don't think we can move forward with the conversation. And the supports are space and coordination with other facilities.
and funds for extra staff. The extra staff
And-
that it would
Yeah.
require
And funding.
is huge.
Like when the kids go to bed and they know they have a 2-hour delay the next day, do they go to bed saying, "Great, now I can get 8 hours sleep," or do they go to bed later because now they wake up later? Right? I mean, that's kind of the nature of what happens, right?
That is not what the research shows, Evan.
I know, but
But I understand what
well,
you're saying.
they should come into my house.
They apparently have not had some on-site surveys at the
Yeah,
sports.
obviously
Tell
not.
us, what time did your kids go to bed last night? What time did they get up?
I don't even know.
I know my son didn't get up till 12:30.
Right. Well, that's yeah. So
They'll sleep as long as you let them.
right.
But again, it was really the presentation was really very impressive.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so is that enough information for you, Diana?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Is there any communication from the public on the topic or on any topics?
I'm going to commence. I'll be quick.
Hi, Carolyn McLaughlin, parent, teacher. After we had the board meeting, or the budget meeting 2 weeks ago, I asked my students, I think it was an A day, and I asked my students first period, in that first period block where all the kids are bleary-eyed, and I asked them how many hours of sleep they got the night before. And it was very interesting to me. I think my first period class has 8 students in it, and of the 8, 6 of them had their cell phones on with them all night, like they kept them on vibrate. And I asked the 2 who didn't, I said, "Do you sleep without your phone?" And they said, "Yes." And then I asked the students, did their phone wake them up throughout the night? And they said, "Well, I don't answer it." So the phone was interrupting their sleep. And then I, commented on, I'm trying to think what else I said, but it was very interesting to see that, and again, Evan, what you said about, you set the time frame for your children. Thank you for saying that. Because it's something that as teachers, I think we feel frustrated by some days because common sense says it's bedtime. And even though your children argue with you, it's bedtime. Go to bed. And, I've heard from my 11-year-old, well, I'm not tired. Then go lie in bed and think of something. You will fall asleep. And I think we hear that a lot less now because there's so many, extraneous things distracting our children. But I think it boils down to, we all know we had to get up early, but we all know we need a certain amount of sleep. We know the devices have to go away. And I think that if we just approach things like that, I think that the early start time really does not, research does say it, but I don't know if research also brings in the fact that the parent has to say, put your phone away, turn it off. Go to bed and just lie there and you will fall asleep. And, I still think that basic parenting 101 is key to success for our children. And,
Do you think that it would be interesting to ask, the PTA or somebody to, do you think parents would attend like a workshop on like strategies to help your kids sleep more?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, I was telling Dr. Bowers earlier, my daughter texted me today her calendar that she organized. I was blessed with an incredibly organized child. I know, it's crazy. But, I think that would help because I think that somewhere that gets lost in translation for adults. You don't want to, offend your child. You don't want to alienate your child. You don't want them to be without. But at the same time, just like when we talked about not using worksheets anymore, I'm kind of old school. I need something in front of me. I like a hybrid approach. I think some worksheets work. I think some don't. I think that some, parenting skills are good. I think some could be changed, but I think that that's a great approach to start things, just to say, like, what could help, what is not helpful. I think it's a great idea.
Learn some more strategies. Just kind
Yeah.
of like what we were talking about PBL, right? It's just like another tool in your toolbox. Could we give parents more tools in
It's
their
the
toolbox
hardest job
to
in the
help with
world, and
that?
it comes with no manual. And we all know that. And, you're giving your baby and said, here you go.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of left to your own devices. And, along the way, I've had compliments from people, oh, you're doing such a great job. And some days I look behind me to see if they're talking to me because, the morning that I had with my child wasn't exactly exemplary. But it's everything coming together in a package. And again, it's that we talked in the workshop today about that modeling. And it's what our kids see at home. I mean, how many of our children see us looking at our phones all day long? And I have the newspaper on my phone, and my claim has been, because without it on my phone, I'll never read it. I'm getting the paper in person because we were at the doctor, and my daughter said, Mom, look at this. No, she was at her music lesson. Look at this. It's in the newspaper. She doesn't see a paper because I read it on my phone. And that's, how does she know I'm on my phone reading the paper as opposed to just looking on Facebook or... So I think that these are important messages that our children really need now more than ever because digital technology. Sometimes I like
Changes
holding a piece of
things.
paper in my hand. I think it's important. So okay, my 2 minutes.
Thank you. Anybody else? The floor is open tonight. I like it. Okay, moving on. New business. CSE, CPSE recommendations. Yes, please.
The recommendation is that the Board of Education approves the recommendations by the Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as indicated.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the financial reports. We got a letter about this, and it caused the board to kind of have a conversation. So those of you out there who write us letters, they do impact our conversations. So keep them coming. We were talking about, we have some main reports that we get monthly, and do we want to, they are public reports. Anybody who wants to see them can see them. But do we want to post them on board docs? And if we want to post them on board docs, how do we want to do that? And when do we want to do that? So I'm going to have Ann just, outline the 4 reports that we're talking about and what the information is for the public. So go ahead, Ann.
Okay, there's 4 reports that the board gets at each business meeting, which is the first business meeting of the month. The first is the treasurer's report. It's basically a cash flow report. It's a summary of all of the bank statements that that the district has. It'll show the beginning balance, the beginning of the month, any revenue that came in, expenses, and then the ending balance. And really, it's just a huge summary of the bank reconciliations. There's really no detail of transactions on it. It's basically the summary. The appropriation status report is a budget status report, and if you're familiar with the line item budget, which is all of the account codes and their titles at budget time, it's you know, the final budget. I think that everybody's familiar with that. It's probably like 10 or 11 pages long of account codes. The budget status report will show the original appropriation, which is what was approved by the voters. If there are any transfers between accounts, it will show the expenditures for each line item. It will show funds that are encumbered. Those are committed funds that we know we're going to spend throughout the year, but we haven't actually paid the check to the vendor yet. And that's for the entire general fund. The budget transfer report, I just described that sometimes between account codes, appropriation amounts will have to be changed, whether it just, we may change a code of a staff member, so we want to change the appropriation so that matches where we're paying them out of. There's a budget transfer report that shows any budget transfers that were made that month. And the last report is the warrant, and the warrant is a detailed listing of all the expenditures that were made in the month before. Separately, not produced by the business office, but the claims auditor report is the report that audits those warrants, and to know that those are reliable expenditures and that they followed the appropriate procedures that we're supposed to follow. But the warrants are a very detailed report. It's every check that is cut each month, who it's to, what it's for, and the amounts. And those totals are all really channeled into the budget status report. That's more of a summary. The warrants are the underlying detail.
And it was 67 pages long this month.
It was 67. The warrant was 67. There's a lot of checks.
Details is right.
Yeah. So we need to decide as a group. You know, the board docs kind of presents a new platform that is something for us to consider. Previously, these reports were available to the public, but they were just available in paper form in case somebody wanted to see them. Maybe they were at a board meeting or in the district office, and people could just see them. Now we have board docs, which means that if we choose to put these reports on board docs for public consumption, they're much more widespread. People can look at them at their leisure and in much more with much more scrutiny. One of the goals of the board this year is transparency, right? And financial reporting is certainly a big part of that transparency, right? I guess I'd just like to open it up. Maybe we can go around and you guys can just share what you're feeling about which of these reports do you feel like should be on board docs, which do you feel like should not be. Is there some other place they could live if they shouldn't be on board docs? Just kind of giving your thoughts. Maybe Peter will start on this side this time.
Sure. Yeah, of those 4 reports, we currently post one of them, the Treasurer's Report, in the public section of board docs, so people can go there today and have a look at the Treasurer's Report for the month of September. Anyone who looks at it, I don't think will be too thrilled. I don't think there's a whole lot to get excited about in the Treasurer's report, but it's there if anybody would like to see how the cash is flowing between our various bank accounts. The appropriation status report is, to me, the most interesting, because that breaks down where we're spending money, and we can see exactly where we stand relative to the amount we budgeted for each particular line. So you hear us talking quite a bit about, where's the money for this coming from? Which budget line is it coming from? And we can look at the appropriation status report, and we can see lines where we may be overspending. There may be a negative in that far right-hand column, and if it's early in the year, we might wonder why. And actually, this is something that that I suggested recently, that we might want to consider asking Anne to provide us, along with these 4 reports, with just a very high-level summary of the noteworthy events that have taken place this past month, and we're just really talking about, just a few bullet points, just to say, running a negative on this budget line. It's for staffing. The reason is because we can get BOCES aid if we pay for it from a different budget line, and so everything. So that to me is always the most interesting of the reports, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't provide that report to the public. At least, I haven't. Peggy's going to weigh in on some research that she's done on what other districts post. Yeah, don't panic. You're okay. But that I would say. Looks to me, although I certainly want to hear from Anne on this too, about what might be a reason not to post that particular report. Budget transfers is another extremely unexciting report that I would have no problem at all posting, but don't get too excited about it. And the last one is the warrants. Now, I'm all for transparency and putting things up there, but to me, you have to draw the line somewhere. And actually, that is where I would draw the line, because these are the very low-level transactions that take place many, many times every single day. We spent $20 on laundry detergent. Now, all of those claims are thoroughly audited by our internal claims auditor, who reports directly to the Board of Education. So, and Julia here played that role extremely well for us for how long?
A couple years.
Couple of years, yeah. So, you know exactly what's involved. But before any check is written, there's a series of steps that have to be executed before that check can be signed and sent out. So it's very, very thorough. But it's just excruciatingly low level of detail. And there's also an issue that it may be exposing certain individuals' personal information publicly. So I think there's a risk there to invasion of personal privacy. So that is where I would draw the line. Now, it's not that there's anything to hide, and anybody can submit Freedom of Information law request to our public records officer, who is Linda Dearborn, and they will be provided with that report. At least that's my understanding, right? Yes, it is. Yes, yeah. So that is where I would draw the line. We've got the Treasurer's report up there already, unless I'm not aware of any reasons why we shouldn't put the appropriation status report and the budget transfer reports up there, but I certainly would like to hear from Anne and Diana and also the other board members. Warrants, I would say no.
Good, and Mike Lambert, just to also share, in our mini retreat today, basically shared we can do whatever we want. There's no legal reasons to not put it on board docs or to put it on board docs, that it is up to the board's discretion, just so to throw that in there. Margaret, do you want to?
My feeling is we should have transparency on everything. We should throw everything up there. My concern when I talked to Anne is that on some of these warrant reports, it might make some reference to a child's name. I don't care if somebody's tax records are up there, you can get that anywhere, but I don't want a child's name on a check somewhere because of some kind of services they're getting. I want to protect the kids' privacies. So that would be my concern. My other suggestion of this is, on December 1st, Anne is going to go through all the fundamentals with us. Maybe that's the point where we can look at this and really, because my impression is, I think I'm the only person on the board that's ever actually dealt with these voucher packets and the claims audit and those things and the reports for that. I think once Anne explains all of that and how it works in Finance Manager, that maybe we can come up, if we can visually see it with that presentation, maybe we can come up with a good answer for how much to put out there. I don't want any kids' names out there.
So as I always do, I actually looked through the entire warrant. I looked through everything. And as I was going through it today, knowing about this issue, I noticed that, yes, it's true that there is information in those warrants that is publicly accessible, that I think anybody who wants to get it should be able to get it. But it is information that is linked to people's names and linked, to aspects related to their financial well-being. I think sometimes one of the things we learn is that when things are online and too easily accessible, it's not that the district wants to hide anything, it's that if people really want the information, they can go and get it. It's just having so much data on the internet, there's so much we don't know about the potential risks that runs to people. So once I saw that, and I thought, well, I have a problem with some of the issues, some of the line items in here. I went and I looked at 6 different districts. I went into their version of board docs, and I went and I looked at multiple meetings for each district to see, well, what are they posting? And of the 6 districts that I looked at, and I wrote them down somewhere, but they included Poughkeepsie, Kings Park, Ontura. Anyway, I can provide people, I have it written down what 6 I looked at. There was only one that did post the warrants. And so to me, again, not a random sample, kind of random, but anyway, so then I thought, well, other people might feel the same way. Just one more thing, I do agree with Peter, of the documents that we get that are the most interesting and I think the most relevant to the public is this appropriations document. Am I calling it the right thing? Yeah. Yeah, the appropriation status report, and since we know that there is a claims auditor that goes through so carefully every month, you could also have her report as well, even though you don't get any information per se. What you do get is that everything's been checked really clearly. You can see what issues there were, and the extent to which those issues were, which is typically really quite minor. So that was my thinking about it, based on
The claims auditor report is not currently public either. Is that correct?
Oh, the other thing I was going to say is, following some of the things Mike Lambert indicated, is that anything that would be posted on the public section should be indicated that it's draft, because we won't have approved them yet. So it needs to be made very clear that what's on is the draft. So I don't have any particular. The claims auditor thing just kind of jumped in my head as well. Maybe that would show people, the care that's being given to reviewing but that I did think the appropriations was actually really a good thing for the public to see, possibly. Oh, sorry, you don't need that.
You need 2 mics.
You need to.
Is the claims audit report on there?
It's not publicly shared.
And is there a reason for that?
Well, that's what
we're talking about.
No, but was it never shared? It was never shared.
But this gets to the issue that it's not that things were never shared. Things have always been available to people who want to go skip them.
Right, but it's not on Board Docs.
Board Docs is a new
Right,
endeavor
right.
for
It's a year
this.
old.
Yeah.
Board Docs has been around for a year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would pretty much agree with exactly what Peter said, that I'd be unless Ann could give a compelling reasons why, other than the warrants, those reports really shouldn't be on there. But the warrants, there's too much personal information on there. It's not about transparency. It's one more step. You want a copy of it? Boom, call the office and you'll get it. So the transparency is there. We got to remember what you said about the internet. When we say we're making it public, we're not just making it public to the residents and taxpayers of Phillipstown. We're making it public to someone in the other end of the globe that can. I don't know what they can do with it. Okay, so that's it. If you want it, call the office. We'll get it and to them, and then it's public. So. I really think that's where we should go.
Good, I'm in agreement. I feel like the open question then at this stage, so I feel like everybody is agreeing that we should put the treasurer's report, which is currently there, keep it there, make it public. The appropriation status report, make it public. The budget status report, make it public. The warrants, keep it executive unless somebody asks and they can get it. And then the claims auditor report, make it public.
Well, the claims auditor report may be subject to the same issues as the warrants.
Oh, that's true.
Because they do have some.
It's not just the
Because if
check
it was-
numbers. You're right.
Yeah.
I
'Cause
think
if
Peter's
there's
right.
an exception with a payment, say of $20 to a student, that student's name
No,
will
no,
be
Peter's
right.
on the
exactly right.
report.
Okay, so we're talking about the top 3 reports then going public and the other ones being available to the public if asked. The other open question about that, if we all agree, which we can take a litmus test in a moment and get Ann's input, is that Mike mentioned if we make it, like Peggy said, if we make it public, it's not approved until the board meeting, right? So we could make it public and call it a draft, or we could post it after the meeting and make it public after the meeting.
Post it after.
Post it after the meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
That yes, that makes sense.
How are we feeling about that?
Posting what after the meeting?
Those reports.
Posting the treasurer's report, the appropriation status report, and the budget status report
okay.
after the meeting, after we've approved it.
I'd still like to wait to just hold on the last 2 after Ann shows us everything, how it really does go through the system and what kind of reports we can manipulate, and see if we can pull something without too much information.
You mean like make another report that scrubs the names?
Yeah. But not redacting them. There's a way to pull them out of the report in Finance Manager, right?
Possibly.
And do you have anything else that you want to share from your perspective?
No, I completely agree with what everybody has been sharing, that the level of detail and the risk of posting the warrants in that detail. Because even there's students, there's payroll-related information in there. So there's just a lot that's in there.
Dr. Barris, do you have any? So it sounds like then we could move forward with the caveat that after the December meeting, after we have our Finances 101, if anybody has any further thoughts about how to get the warrants and claims audit reports made public with some sort of adjustment or alternative secondary report of it, if we come to that decision, we can reserve the right to do that at some point. But that, we're all comfortable moving forward making the first 3 that we've been talking about public after they are approved at the board meetings.
That makes sense.
So tonight, after tonight, and we've already approved them, so now when somebody goes online, they can view them publicly. Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And would that be on the website or just on board docs?
I think just on board docs. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Okay. And then the other conversation was about, also brought up by a community member, was the concept, no, not brought up by a community member, brought up by a board member, was it the concept about when we put public correspondence on board docs, which is a choice. It is not required by state law that we do that, but it is a choice of Haldane to do that, to just share what people are saying. So we share it a lot of that correspondence now comes through email. People aren't necessarily writing us letters about it. They're sending an email about it. Are we comfortable putting the person's email address in board docs that goes along with their correspondence? And it was brought up that, no, we shouldn't do that because that's an invasion of their privacy. The point of sharing the correspondence is to share what they said in their letter. It is not to share where to email this person back. And we did check with our lawyer because Julia thankfully did a little research about this for us. And we did check with our lawyer today, and he said that when we're putting it up in correspondence for in board docs, that we do not need to include the email, and we can make a choice to take that part of the equation out. Now, if somebody foiled us and wanted to get that correspondence, they would have the email address as well. You know, that's not something we hide forever. It's just something we are choosing to not put on board docs. Are we all in agreement about that? Is there any further thoughts about that?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think you said it really nicely that the point is to communicate what the communication was, not to.
Share somebody's email address. Yeah.
And also we have that automatic reply now, giving them the warning that the letter will even be on there. So they have the option to send us an email asking us not to post the letter at all.
Right, so somebody can email the Board of Education and not want it shared publicly. And they can just request, please do not share this publicly. I'm just emailing you guys because I want you to know, and we will respect that. If that's not told to us, then we share it publicly. We only don't share it publicly if there's something, you know, to deal with, like a specific name of a teacher or a student. Then we won't share it publicly, because then that's another privacy issue. So I think we're clear on that. Are we clear?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, we want to make it easy for people to communicate with us. We don't want to give people any reasons not to communicate with us. So.
Okay. Any questions from the public?
I have one more announcement to make. I would like to congratulate our girls soccer team who won the regional semifinals today. And they go Saturday to the regional finals, and then if they are victorious, they go to the States. So
Where is it
Go Blue
Saturday?
Devils.
I believe it's in Long Island, but I'm not 100% sure. I believe that that's where it will be.
Okay. Congratulations. Anything else from the board? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.